Now you mentioned Facebook.
Facebook.
We're actually starting to run lower on time than I thought we would be. So when we talk about Facebook and what that adds on, I mean we've been talking about blogs, but Facebook kind of added a different level to what how people interact on it. And just wonder if you could take a look and see what Facebook has added in there as far as the way that atheists are able to find each other, interact, and even learn more about it.
Facebook,
you can bring Twitter too if you want to.
and to a certain extent Twitter. Twitter is basically microblogging. It's blogging 140 characters at a time, or chatting, because a lot of that goes on there too. But those really add an aspect that is much more purely social. So somebody is posting on there about their day, or asking a question for information, or complaining about having run into some kind of discrimination, or people who just won't understand. And there are people right there who've got your back, and who are willing to say, oh, that sucks, and you know that they understand that it really sucks. So,
in the same way that commenting on blogs is a place where relationships form. I think that's a critical, I think we've said this a few ways, but just to be explicit, relationships form on blogs. And that's very important.
Actually, this might be the time to mention Jody and Jason.
Yeah.
Well, sure, that's a good example.
Yeah. Jody and Jason are a couple who live in Halifax, Nova Scotia, not even in the US, who ended up getting engaged by basically Jody ran Jason a little chase through several atheist blogs to get to a proposal on P.Z. Meyer's blog Pharyngula, where tens of thousands of people saw this proposal, and I was part of setting that up. And so now I might actually be going to a wedding in another country for people I've never met in February.
But people you feel like you really know.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk to them every day.
Right. Yeah. And what I was going to add to that was that Facebook is a place where that happens as well, but in a more restricted area. In the sense that social space is more restricted. It's a little bit like talking at the dinner table with 2,000 people, as opposed to just whoever's out there.
Right.
Okay. So on my own, I have a couple thousand people on Facebook to interact with, and in theory, and I can say something on Facebook, and I know that I'm only going to get friendly responses. I'm only going to get information. I'm only going to get. It's very friendly. We are really all friends, even though we haven't ever met. Whereas on a blog, in a blog setting, people can get nasty. People can abuse each other a bit more. It's also an organizational. Just so people know, it's an organizational network. You can you can make an organization on Facebook saying, called something like 1 million people who think Sarah Palin is a jerk, and then 1 million people will join. Or maybe fewer.
Right.
There's several atheist groups, including Minnesota atheists, that are represented from around the world, that are represented on Facebook.
And specifically, Minnesota Atheists also uses Facebook as an organizational tool, as well as using meetup.com, to invite people to events, which I think has very much increased participation.
Oh, it's been amazing.
In part because once you sign up for the group, they can send you an invitation to an individual event. You don't have to say, do I want to go do something with the atheists this weekend? Is there anything going on? Go find the information. They push it out to you. You say yes or no, and it reminds you. I mean, it's...
Yeah.
It makes
really
it
is
so much
like,
easier.
There's so many people that I wouldn't have ever met, And then people that say they met me once and then they checked out my blog and then they really wanted to get to know me a little bit better. And so it has been great for that. But for people that are atheists finding each other. But then there's kind of another thing that we've been using too, and we mentioned Pharyngula a couple of times, where some news site will put up an online poll saying, should God be allowed in the schools or something like that, and PZ will find that and he'll invite people to do what?
To fringulate the polls.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea there is you have an online poll that some agency, organization, or news agency puts up, It's often in a fairly biased, it's a small newspaper in the middle of Kentucky, or it's a Christian organization that has a poll, does God exist, or should evolution be taught alongside of creationism?
Should atheists be allowed to run for office?
Right,
Right.
that kind of thing. And and P.Z. Myers runs Fringula, which we mentioned. It's the big blog. It's very large. Many people read it every day, and so people tend to send him the links to these polls. And when the link is fresh, you look at the poll, and 93 people say that atheists should not run for office, and 4 people say that atheists should run for office in some county in Kentucky.
5 minutes later.
5 minutes later, it's
Yeah.
55,000. The numbers would be a few thousand people will show up, and legitimate individuals, not robots, just
Right.
people going and expressing their opinion on this public poll. Only they all happen to be readers of Fringula, and the numbers change. And my view of the real outcome of that, what I think is most important, is it simply demonstrates that whenever we want to, we can get a few thousand people together in a few minutes.
Right. I mean, nobody thinks that all of us going there makes the poll any more scientific. And in fact, part of the point of going there is to show that asking a bunch of people online questions like this is really kind of silly.
Right, yeah, right. Then there's collaborative blogs, and of course probably the reason that we get together so often is because of a blog that we formed together, and is the Quiche Moraine blog, which has multi-purpose. And one of the things that we really wanted to do with it, was to invite people that might not otherwise blog, share whatever they have, and pretty proud of being part of that.
Yes,
especially with
and
you guys,
actually
Bill.
one of our biggest, and it might still be the most read post on there, was a guest post from August Berkshire.
Yeah. Yep.
Talking about, I don't remember what it
Something
was.
about atheism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. I mean, it was specifically about
Mm-hmm.
atheism. And so the three of us keep it going and write fairly regular posts. And so we have a readership when somebody who doesn't want to jump in with both feet wants to get out there. And it's not expressly atheist, and
Right.
it's not even something where people need to write about any particular topic, whether they are atheists or not, but it gives the community that we're part of a chance to, again, exercise a voice that might not be heard.
And it was kind of fun, too, to have Norm Barrett-Wick's Space Week ones
Yes.
included in there, because he's been doing it for years, but he never really had it as part of a blog.
Yeah, and actually, some of the fun in talking to other atheists is not talking about religion all the time and discovering that we have other things in common, because frankly, not everybody who's an atheist, and particularly somebody like me who didn't grow up who didn't grow up in religion and then have to find my way away from it. We want other things to talk about. And, some of them, like talking about science, talking about space, talking about human achievement, are still very much related. Talking about critical thinking.
Right.
I don't necessarily blog a lot specifically about atheism, but I blog about skepticism. And I blog about actually sitting down and thinking about things.